Hey, good evening, everybody.
Evening.
We are getting down to it. Our last report writing here. Thanks for everybody who's jumped in. We've done a lot of work over the past few days. Um, so thank you to everyone. Let's see, do you want to flip to your next slide there?
Yeah, I'm still letting folks in.
Yep,
But
you bet.
we can go ahead and get started. What I had sent out just a moment ago were these materials that are linked here. We actually use this. Sorry, let me stop sharing for a minute. And it looks like I hadn't, I need to update this URL that's here for the one that you had just replaced us with, Mariah. But what I sent out should have the right link if folks want to follow that. Just give me a minute.
Thank you. And I'll just say to everyone, thanks for your patience. I've worked as quickly as I could and had some work deadlines myself. So I just got Alexandra a draft, um, just not long ago here. So we will work through that together.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, it was such an incredibly strenuous sprint this year. So you should have linked this draft that Mariah was just describing here. So when you click into that, it should bring you to a new document that this is now called Copy of. And so Mariah can talk to us more about how this came together. Mariah, I don't know if there was any, if it would be helpful while people come into this space to review any of the questions, answers, or the local option levy report. Do you have thoughts on how to structure the time while people are still coming into the
Yeah.
space?
So if Daychelle's on, I was wondering if she would be willing to jump in and talk us through the levy report. Really nicely done on that.
How do we access this document that you have shared?
I had sent out an email. I think it went out at like 5:28, so just a few moments ago. You'll have a link to a PDF that looks like um, let's see. It's on our CBRC page.
So he may
And
mean we don't have access, like I need to have access granted.
oh, okay. I think that Dashiell, can you provide access to these committee members, or if you just share it with me at amartin5@pps.net, then I can share it out with
Oh,
everyone if
I
you'd
might
like.
be coming in as the wrong person. Hang on one second.
If you're referring to me, it says for the Google Doc, it's the link is available to anyone. So maybe it's the Otter materials that folks are talking about.
I'm just trying to find out where to access it.
So in the email that I sent, I included a link. And when you click on that link, it should bring you to this website here with the PDF of the materials for tonight. And we're starting with this local option levy report draft for review. And so
Okay.
what's linked when we click on this is this document, which
Got that.
Dashiell has
I
said
got
is
it.
available for everyone.
Thank you.
So I guess since there's so much to cover, and folks haven't had a chance to review this because it also had a couple of deadlines to get to. So I guess I'll just give folks a chance to kind of review the overall information, and I'll just highlight some of the areas that I added to this report at the bottom, actually, which were some recommendations and opportunities for growth. So in last year's report, I think Mariah, you did that extremely well done. And so I just really kind of mimicked that whole top portion, except just added in, broke out those recommendations and opportunities for growth, because I think it's just something we should keep reiterating in every aspect of this budget review. I also couldn't remember everyone's name. I feel like I could have looked it up, but those are supposed to be at the bottom as well. But if folks haven't had a chance to review it, I think we should probably focus on the larger document and then maybe come back to this at the end.
Sounds great. Thank you. And it's really well done here. Appreciate you breaking it out, and I like some of the recommendations here. I'm not sure if how the levy funds get allocated, if it goes to each school or if it's just a lump that gets in the budget, or quite how that works, but I think it'd be interesting for the public to know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that a little bit more transparency would go a long way, and I think that ties into some of the messaging in the CBRC report as well.
So we had shared this, my colleague Juno Chang, our senior budget manager, had provided this information in our meeting on the 24th, where we walked through these projection or these actual details around average cost of teacher and an estimate of the count of teachers funded, and then included the projected for our current year and an estimate for the upcoming school year. And then we had also provided this chart depicting the same kind of data points in a visual format. I heard the question, how are they actually allocated to schools? We have a school by school summary report here that depicts how if we did not have a local option levy, what would the school by school staffing look like? So that's what is presented here for all of our PPS schools, grouped by school type, as well as these centrally administered programs or school-like programs that are operating here. So this is how we've tried to depict that here.
But it's not a direct line by line, right?
So this is an estimate. This is a
Yeah.
projection based on those other data points that we shared.
Gotcha.
Were there any other questions, or should we get back to this in context with approving the other the report that Dashiell has prepared? We can give time for people to look at it like you had suggested.
Do you want to give just a minute now and go ahead and approve that?
I'm fine with that. I heard that it might be beneficial to give people time to review it
Okay.
too. Grace, I see your hand.
I'm just not sure where this document is. I've got the Google Doc of the report, the CBRC report, but this one I don't know where it is.
Yeah, if you missed coming in, I know really late, so at around 5:28, I sent an email to this group, and it included a link to this slide deck for this evening, and it has links to these documents that have recently been updated. So Mariah has created this
Got
cleaned
it. Okay,
version.
I just refreshed and I found it. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. I think while people are coming in, just a status update on these questions and answers. We've addressed the questions as best we can. So right now there are no outstanding questions here.
Let's see, Grace.
Yeah, Grace, do you still have your hand up?
I do not.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll give folks a few minutes to look over the levy. What I would propose on that is that probably on both of these documents, that we vote to, when we vote to adopt them with any kind of type changes, so if there's small changes without changing the meaning or of kind of what we're trying to say here. I'm talking to Ida at the moment. Sorry, guys. Yeah, any corrections we need to make. So here's how I compiled it. You all have done a wonderful job and put a lot of content into our original document. I had a hard time just kind of adopting all the changes and making things fit. So I tried to take them by topic kind of as we went through in that chart. I think there were still a few areas where I wasn't sure if people were going to come back and put some things in. Maybe testing was one of them, or if we had just integrated some things like mental health into some other areas that we have mentioned in terms of wraparound support. So maybe that's not a call out as in its own thing, but it's kind of integrated somewhere else. So as we go through this, just see if this makes sense to you, or if you feel like we need to break something out, pull something out, that kind of thing. So we have a little bit of our preamble, who we are, what we do, and then our overall reflections to frame our report.
So is anybody else having problems getting into this document? I can't get in.
Yeah, I can't get in either.
I
Okay.
think I moved it. I think I need to create the access because I put your copy, Mariah, on Google Meet. So let me, or on Google Docs. Let me do that right now.
Yeah, Grace.
I was just quickly glancing at the levy report, and I love that we have those recommendations down below. One of them, I'm wondering, and I might be wrong, but I thought we already had a differentiated staffing model because one of the bullet points says consider weighting us staffing based on different factors, and I thought we already had that. Did that go away?
I'm
So
not
I can share that in context. Grace, what page are you looking at?
Yeah. Looking at the levy draft, I'm looking at the second page, and it's the second bullet under recommendations and opportunities for growth. Consider adopting a weighted staffing model that accounts for students' needs, including poverty levels, race, ethnicity, etc. And I thought we already did that.
where's that located, Grace?
It's in the levy report under recommendations and opportunities for growth.
No, I mean what, sorry, I mean what you're referring to, like where that weighted staffing model is.
I can't find it like on my fingertips right now, but I'm hoping staff can answer. I thought they already did a differentiated staffing model. It was with the past superintendent.
That's accurate. We do continue
We
to
can
have
take
a
it out, that.
differentiated.
Yeah, I can take that out.
Yeah, and just you can see more about the differentiated staffing model where I'm sharing in the budget document in the informational section. There will be information about this formula that we used.
I think my aspects were more around the equity lens, but I can go ahead and take that bullet out if we're saying that that bullet's answered in that report. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate. We have
Okay.
a differentiated staffing model.
You had mentioned you didn't add anything around assessment. Do you still have that outline where we had put our names in, where we can contribute in those certain sections? Is that available? Can I just add the information there and then maybe you can add it to the document?
You sure can. We still have that. I still have that open. I just moved stuff to a new one, so I didn't kind of mix things. But yeah.
Okay. How do we get
please
access to that outline?
I will, the outline is the same link from our last meeting.
Could you resend it if you have it
Sure.
all?
Grace, just jump in. Yeah, we can.
Nope, but that was from the last one.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so as people get access to our copy of the CBRC report, which is where I've kind of compiled things, what I'll say is we had multiple authors who particularly on things like enrollment, also on central office stuff, and how do we phrase that? On operational efficiencies and central services. We had multiple authors on that. So sometimes I've combined your language, so you won't see your exact language on that. If you want to make a tweak on that, absolutely please do. Or if you feel like I've missed something and we need to pull it back in, please flag it. But I've tried to, kind of for brevity, since we have a pretty long report here, about 13 pages, that's kind of how I've approached this, is to try to pull as many of our recommendations together without a ton of repeating. But we had a lot of really strong ideas here. I appreciate everyone. Okay, so I can kind of start in with this. If we want to take a second, and you can read the overall reflections in the report. I want to begin with a little bit of appreciation, noting that the effort to mitigate the direct impact on students and classroom staff, which is one of our top priorities, and affirming the superintendent's maintenance of PPS's equity allocation, especially in light of the reduction to Title I funds. Noting the reduction of a significant number of positions, and the value that people and knowledge really contribute to our school system to help close the budget gap. And just noting that there are not any easy choices at this point. The budget context, the proposed budget largely continues in the direction set by previous administrations and boards, maintains investments in programs and interventions in staffing patterns that have produced limited progress in closing achievement gaps. We know graduations have improved modestly, but too many students remain underprepared for careers in college, which was kind of bared out in our data. We call out chronic absenteeism, which is both a symptom and a multiplier of underlying disparities and resource gaps and unmet student needs. And it was identified by the superintendent as a key concern and is discussed further below. Note that that's high. Last year was 36% above the national average. Go into the funding, that we're receiving funds from the Student Success Act. That's $2.4 billion at the state level, but we're still facing a $40 million shortfall. I'm kind of summarizing here. We call out here temporary solutions such as incremental staffing cuts and one-time reserves may balance for a single year, but don't address the long-term trajectory. Without a structural span that spans several years, PPS risks diving further into austerity while losing sight of our goals for equity, excellence, and innovation. As a committee representing communities, we find it difficult to support a budget process, and I've heard this from a number of you guys, combining some language here, that continues to result in cuts and the loss of educator talent and reduces student access to a well-rounded education, especially in the absence of a clear, actionable plan or a timeline. So we call for PPS to reassess priorities and determine what is essential and feasible. I know some research here by PSU and Eco Northwest that's made clear that most municipalities and school systems, of which PPS is typical, can probably anticipate declining budgets for at least another decade. So this, again, our outlook. So going forward, we urge the board to consider more targeted structural reductions, whether programs, initiatives, locations to address a structural deficit. We recommend that the district articulate a clear long-term fiscal strategy that addresses our underlying issues driving budget instability. This plan should include specific milestones, timelines, and opportunities for stakeholder input. We support advocacy with the legislature for additional revenue as PPS transitions to more sustainable model, but also urge the board to pursue public-private partnerships for investment or revenue. That's kind of a preamble. And then we go in here to our areas of inquiry. Yeah, Grace, please jump in.
Yeah, thank you. The last little bit there, I would like to add in a little more oomph to, we've not mentioned yet QEM, and we have in past reports, if that could be added to that section about the support, the advocacy with the legislature, to fund at QEM specifically.
Yeah, you just want to note that we want to ask the legislature to fund at QEM.
Yeah.
One of the things I noted is that in the superintendent's report, that report called out that I think it was like 98+% of our classes are at or under enrollment targets. And I would be really curious to see how that compares to the QEM. I don't know. Would you think it worthwhile to pull that? Does anybody have that kind of information on QEM class sizes?
I don't know if QEM specifies class sizes because we don't have a cap in Oregon for class size. But in terms of and I know QEM in some ways is even outdated, in a lot of ways, but it is a much higher target of a total amount of funds that are supposed to go to public education that we have never met since it's been, listed since it was put out by the legislature saying they were committed to doing it. They've never done it.
Michelle, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I track the QEM pretty closely, and they do have targeted staffing levels. So that's information that's available publicly, and we can, after we finish up here, Alexandra and I can send out a note with the current report, which is really expanded to include a lot of social emotional supports for kids. And the grade targets for class size are different at each level. And then they have a recommendation for the amount of supplemental staff as well. So it's actually really comprehensive. And I appreciate that you guys are anchoring back to a report that the legislature has deemed necessary to share how far we are off. Like that's an actual commission that develops that report every 2 years. So that's very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you for the update. I would love to see that.
I'm not sure I can edit this document directly. So do we just want to put a break or a note in here?
Mariah, I just tried to give you editor access. Does it work for you?
Maybe.
You refresh, maybe.
I think something too, I'm just going to jump right in, is that as this is a recommendation from this committee to the board, is maybe to suggest an analysis that compares our schools to the QEM. I think that would yield some really great information for us as far as long-term direction. So I don't know if this is the appropriate place or not, but I see that you're sharing openly opinions and suggestions, and this might be a good spot.
Should I enter a suggestion, Grace, to your point that we support advocacy with the legislature to fund at the QEM level? If we can just take that.
Yeah, that would be great. And I also would be curious, like Michelle just mentioned, if systems planning and performance, I think that's the right department, if they would be able to present an analysis of where we are at in terms of those other recommendations, not the total funding package. We know where we are with that, but with class sizes and what level of supports, especially counselors, all of that, that would be really interesting to see what the commission has decided is quality education compared to what we're offering right now. And looping that back into like the milestones and the targets with a roadmap of where we're going, that might be a good place to start. We don't have to agree with that, I guess, but it might be a good place to look and see, if this is what has been determined as the benchmark of quality education, how close are we, or how far are we, and what do we need to do to get there?
I think absolutely. And in that legislative report that came out this year, and Michelle just referenced, I mean, kind of the, mic drop on that was that it recommended about a third increase in educational funding if we were going to reach the QEM, for educational systems across the state of Oregon, not specific to PPS, but just to give an idea of what it would take.
I think it includes too a multi-year plan for the state to get there. And so, we could model that as well for PPS if that were to occur. So that might align with that long-term thinking that you guys are suggesting here tonight.
I'm not sure that I want to add numbers in here for, I mean, I think we can ask, and recommend the legislature funds to the QEM, but I've also heard pretty clearly from the governor and the legislature that was not one of their priorities this biennium. Unfortunately.
So I did add in the statement, but I was multitasking, so I'm not sure I captured that accurately. Mariah, do you have the edit access that you needed at this point?
Let me see if I do now. It's okay. I'll make some notes on my copy and then sync them up later.
Okay, I just shared it twice, so if you might need to refresh it, or I'm not sure, but I have captured the comment. Michelle, your comment, I'm not sure that I heard everything that you were suggesting or offering to the group. I wrote CBRC also recommends PPS engage in analysis on class size benchmarking. So was that an action for PPS or?
Yeah, I was thinking that this may be an entry point for the committee to suggest that we look at our schools in comparison to the QAM at the various grade levels, because that information is publicly available, and it's like an overlay of analysis on top of our data. So, and it's just suggested. I don't know if all of this committee agrees that this is the right place for that.
I think that makes sense, and not just for class size benchmarking, but all of the recommendations.
I'd certainly agree with that. I was very interested, as I brought up, to hear the class size target and where that came from. Yeah, crowd jump, please jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know I added that language that we can put in the letter in the outline.
Would you let me know which page you edited in the outline, Karanja?
Yeah, let me check and see.
Was
I'm
this
sorry,
about
page 2.
Okay. Okay, great. So Adriel had also wanted to contribute to this area. So I'm going to plan to move this over to that other document. I'll do that right now.
Angela, could you talk us through that for those of us who are less kind of familiar with the, kind of the
Yeah. So,
assessment?
yeah, no problem. So just how I explained, it'll be a better use of our funds if we actually use a more aligned assessment that is connected to the state standardized test that we have to take. The NOR reference assessment is not, it's like comparing apples and oranges. So if we use a free assessment, interim assessment tool, that can save us some extra dollars that we could maybe allocate somewhere else.
And Karaja, are the interim assessments provided free by the state?
Yes.
Cool.
And it looks like that bill is probably going to most likely pass. So it's going to be a requirement for all districts to implement interim assessments. So we would just be ahead of the curve if we're using the state provided, the free platform that state provides. We could save us some money.
I see Director Sullivan.
Yes, when you were talking about the QEM, it just sounds like a really good idea to say what you're thinking of, to put in actually what some of those things mean, because we keep talking about the QEM without saying, what it looks like. So I just think that's a really good idea that you're thinking of that.
Have we already put in the recommendation or the language around maybe selling off some of the assets that PPS
Yes, I added
owns?
already.
Okay, what page is that on?
Oh, that's a good question. Right there. Yeah.
Is
Asset
that page
management.
9? Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Should we go through this section by section, starting at the top?
We could do that. If we're done in asset management and folks are reading it, we could just kind of talk through this one, perhaps. And what I would say on these is if anything, feels too strong, what we can do is, there's words like urge or explore. We can talk about an observation versus a recommendation on this one. Just depending on, kind of where our committee lands, we can have divergent views on these things.
I'm open to using if there's like softer language, then I'm definitely open to some changes as well. My writing can be a little straightforward, so yeah, open to changes.
I'll just say I personally am fine with it as is. It reads, we urge caution, but we support the strategic sale of assets that are not viable for future educational use due to costly upgrade requirements. We give an example, could be Dixon Street, could be considered. We could say explored if we want. I think that one's already being considered, frankly.
Yeah.
Like it's, Director Sullivan, you may know more.
Yes, that's definitely being considered. So,
Okay.
yeah.
We don't have to be shy then.
No.
And the line that,
Oh,
you'll go
sorry.
ahead, please.
I just have a quick question about the Abbott budget item. Is that from the state interim, like an integrated grant, or is that coming from the general budget?
That was the in the questions answers document.
Yes.
This looked at all funds. I would have to look back at the data to see if that was from general fund, but yeah, I can look at that and get back to you.
All right, thank you.
I believe it was from general fund.
I'm curious to know. I didn't know Abbott went all the way through kindergarten. I thought Abbott was a middle school and high school thing, but Abbott serves primary grades as well.
We have some K through 12 schools where I think that programming took place at that school site. So I think we reached out to our program contacts to define which school levels these programs operated at, and that was their response. But I think for Avid, that may be because we have K through 12 schools where that program is available. So it's like, like you're observing is likely not serving kindergarten students, right?
Okay, if we don't have anything else on asset management, then let's roll through some of these from the top. See, we have observations on staffing and student impacts, and this one's really important. This talks about our views on Title I funding. And we had we had some different views on Title I funding that I tried to work and bring together here. So you'll see that in this draft.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm just wondering a little bit about that last paragraph in that section. Mariah, did you draft that language?
I don't recall. Recall if I did, maybe.
Maybe you did. Okay. Well, I'd like to know a little bit more about that because the equity staffing formula, like there are things in place. And so I'm wondering more specifically what is missing. That's all. I wasn't sure if you had added that or
Oh God. I think I brought a couple of things together on this. I think the gist of this one, and what I was after here, is I'm not aware of, and correct me if we have incentives for teachers to attract and retain at either Title I or not necessarily the same thing, underperforming schools. And I think some of that has to do with our union.
yeah, so you're referring to incentive pay?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If that's the clarifying language we need there.
Oh, I think I was just missing your drift, but I'm with you now. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's a good clarification for the board.
Were there any comments on this section?
I think I was hoping for stronger language. I mean, that's what I wrote in was stronger language because you know, our equity formula is flat, but then Title I funding is taking a huge cut. So Title I funding is determined by you know, combined underserved. So they're both trying to target both things. And I know we're not in control of the Title I funding, but it's alarming to me that there hasn't been, at least to my knowledge, a board level discussion or even presented by staff. Here are some ways that we can mitigate this big cut. We talked a lot when COVID funding was going away about, you know, how to soften the blow for different things. But it feels like with this Title I looming cuts, there hasn't been that level of attention to it, and it's been like, oh well, we didn't get the money, so we're just gonna have to, or we may not get the money, so we're gonna have to make this cut, and no other thoughts about, you know, how does that impact those schools, and how does that end up basically taking huge steps back towards the board goals in closing the racial disparities in achievement. So I would like the language to be a little bit stronger.
Well, I think if you look at book 2, definitely the FTE, there's more teachers per student in the underserved schools. So I think we're trying to keep that same percentage difference, even though we have less of a percentage to pull from, of course, without the Title I. So I don't know if you've looked at book 2, but I think we're trying to really keep that same proportion. And I know in tutoring too, some of the schools who have better scores are not getting the tutoring. So I think they're looking pretty carefully at who needs what. At least I hope so. It looks that way to me.
I agree that there's differentiated levels of, you know, ratios, and we're targeting higher ratios of staff for our highest need schools, but there hasn't been a specific way to address the cuts to, so that's been like the standard, and then comes in the cuts to title, and there's been nothing. So it's a step backwards for those schools. There are some schools that are not Title I that are not losing, that are losing more students than Title I students, but they're not losing as much staff.
Hmm.
You know, Rosa Parks, 97% combined underserved is, by my calculations, going to be losing about 23% of their staff, while their enrollment is going up almost 2% projected because of title cuts.
Hmm.
And we're not making efforts to backfill that, which really just doesn't align with the board goals at all. So
that's good to point out, because I had not seen that.
I've just proposed a change in the document, Grace. See if this change in language by moving this up and changing some of the language might address this a little bit. What if we moved this to second recommendation? The district should explore options to shift resources so that staffing at Title I schools remains stable relative to enrollment.
that feels better.
How do other people feel about that?
I like that.
I agree.
Okay, let's keep the edit.
Grace, have you noticed any other schools in that situation?
Yeah, quite a few. I did a rough sheet when I was staying up late. I couldn't stay up late any longer. But I tallied up what from volume 2, the percent enrollment change and the percent staffing change for all of the title schools. And what I got was the average enrollment drop for title schools was 0.4%. So
Oh, wow.
I know that our district-wide trend is down 10%, but it's not coming from the title schools largely. And the staffing change is down almost 10%. So their enrollments as a group are staying the same, and staff is being cut by an average of 10%. But some schools most of them are losing staff. There are a couple schools that are gaining staff. Roseway Heights is getting a lot more students, so they gained some staff. I think it was Atkinson was in the pluses. Yeah, but everybody else was in the minuses. Like Beach, they have 61% combined underserved, and by my calculations, their enrollment is going down about 7.5%, but their staffing percent was they're going to lose 24% of their staff.
What do you recommend the ratio should be?
Well, it shouldn't be Title I schools if their enrollments are flat, and we are committed to closing the racial disparities in achievement, and we know that that's where most of our racially diverse students go to school, we shouldn't cut their staffing. I mean, I'm trying to be true to the board goals. I also know the reality is this is a huge pot of money from the federal government, that we're not in a position to fill everything, but we do need to pay attention to, as the enrollments decline, where are those enrollment declines happening? And like the bullet that y'all that Mariah added, I think sums it up. But like it shouldn't impact schools whose enrollments are not declining.
And I see they're really trying to take it from staff rather than teachers. If you look at this one, like they're going down from 16 to 15 in teachers, keeping their counseling, dropping in library, dropping one of their support coaches, clerical, couple other paraeducators. That's got to be tough. Yeah.
And a lot of times, because I once was education assistants, the education assistants are the ones who work under a certified teacher doing like reading groups.
Yeah.
And so then that means that there is not going to be a chance for at these schools for like a double dose of direct instruction for reading, which really has implications for the 3rd grade reading goal, especially with all the science of reading stuff that we have now. I know at the new district I'm working for now, they have trainings for their educational assistants to be able to provide that. And I know as an EA, I received that when I was starting in Portland. So it's going to make a big difference, even if it's not impacting the number of teaching staff. Any staff loss is going to be felt for sure.
Those are great points you brought up, and I like the way that you brought up the statistics of the number of enrollment going up and down and how it compares to the overall district's enrollment and how it's going down. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And how Title I is not declining. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. But I'm curious now to know, with the current staff that these schools have been operating in, have we been seeing results? And have we been seeing growth in terms of academic achievement, or has it been kind of like pretty stagnant or the same, or is it going down? I'm curious to know now.
I think if you look at the school profiles, it'd give you like the status of their test scores and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
We also know that, you know, we're a few years out from COVID, and our communities of color were the getting the biggest impact from COVID. Um, so I'm not saying that there isn't room for improvement, but also if we're not seeing huge gains, um, that could also be part of what's going on. You know, people are still recovering.
So I'm just typing here and adding a little language. If we want to add an observation here or express a concern um, over impact classroom staffing for Title I schools, is that something we want to add, or we don't just leave it as is?
Are you meaning to say, oh, classroom supports? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Feel free to dive in and massage that.
Maybe something like, especially at schools, um, especially for positions that provide direct service for literacy. Just cluing into the board goals again.
Okay. Moving on a little bit, Grace, you had noted when we were talking about impacts to students that high school career coordinators and language line access staff have been eliminated, and that those are key student supports. And then the recommendation that the board develop strategies to retain and attract effective teachers, underperforming schools, and go beyond equity allocations by using outcome-based criteria. I wasn't quite sure how those were linked to kind of the elimination of these wraparound services. I was trying to pull everything together from a document, if that's the right place for those, or if we want those there at all. If we just want to use this as an observation, that that's an impact to students. As I'm reading through, we're kind of going back and forth on things.
I think a clarification on so with the high school career coordinator change, there was the discretion at the local level to fund that. So what we have described in our presentation materials was a shift to having this position allocated, but our high school discretionary budgets could feasibly support that position. And there was also around this language access positions that we have. There was some robust conversation about this last night, and our chief of communications presented to the board after the public comment session. And I know that she shared the considerations around those positions, especially looking at the usage and the flexibility in terms of scheduling with contracted language access interpreters and translators. And so that was especially the consideration there. So I wanted to state that. Michelle or Tammy, I don't know if you have anything else you would offer around these two positions that are being called out here around impact to student supports.
No, I would say that it's worth watching that little bit of what our comms chief shared about the language line access, and their staff is they're more locked into a regular working day, and so their ability to respond outside of their regular day hours is very limited. And so what she had shared was that the access provided by like on-demand services were being used at a much higher rate for less cost. And so that's what came with her recommendation. I don't think that was a spot on summary, so I really recommend watching that part of the budget hearing just to hear her perspective on that.
So question about that, because I'm an educator, I use language line, like Lionsbridge a lot for conferences and that sort of thing. So when she said the 80%, that made me think 80% of who is using it. Is that because teachers are more heavily using it? Like, do families even have a way to, on demand, ask for a Lionsbridge interpreter? Because I think you have to enter in a certain like code so that outside contract person gets paid. And I think that's why we're hearing the concern from the community about the language line access staff, because that is an actual person that they can call anytime and it doesn't cost them anything. But the contracted services are definitely useful for the school staff to use. Like I've got my planning period, I can plug in my code and, and have an interpreted call. But if it's initiated by either a student or a family member, I think the only pathway to gain language access is through our language line staff. So it kind of doesn't allow for that two-way communication of who can start it if we only have the contracted company that staff has to initiate. I hope that makes sense.
Another position that was described last night were multilingual community agents. And I wanted to share that was also brought up in this context as another central support oriented towards providing language access.
And is that like centrally, or is that at like hub clusters, or do you know how that's organized?
I can look while we're on this meeting. We have some externally facing information that I can look for, Grace.
Yeah, so I guess that would just be the question is, do we still have enough access that students and families can initiate conversations with the school, not just a one way from the school initiating?
It looks, when I look online, like that's what I thought the service was to be able to request those kinds of services. And there's a website that I'm looking at right now where it says request a community agent, and there's a button. So it looks like we are supporting families in a way that you're describing to request language services through these community agents.
Does it say how many we have?
I think I'd have to look more in the details to get that answer.
Yeah.
I just received a communication about the interpreters this afternoon and said there's 3 different ways we use interpreters, and there's a lot of overlap. And I think it's the overlap they're trying to take care of. But I said there's bilingual community agents, contracted language access vendors, and full-time staff. So I guess they're just trying to make it work better, but it does seem hard to lose the staff that's actually at the school and knows the kids. But if you want, I can send that to people. It's on in my email when we're through with this. It made it a little more understandable.
Mignon, I see your hand up.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to contribute to this conversation. Being that I work with immigrant and refugee families and services, there are a lot of resources. I think my best understanding of this is that it would be encouraged for families to dual enroll, once again, like wraparound services within organizations such as ERCO that provide these supports. Um, yes, sometimes we use like Linguava, um, just systems for language, but we have a language bank that's so huge. DHS uses it. One of the benefits is just that once the families tap into such services, it's they kind of get it on demand. I know sometimes it's just that right now I need to speak to an interpreter. Things like that can be set up as well. But, you know, we also fight for grants on that side, being a nonprofit, to support families in such situations. So there's the early learning, which that's where I work in that department, but there's also the youth department. So I just wanted to share that. I don't know if that's really fitting, but I just know that there's a lot of resources, and I'm finding that working in this industry or this community setting, bridging the gap, just making that connection. I see it and I'm like, okay, you guys need to work with you guys over here. You guys have what they need. So I just kind of wanted to share that there are definitely resources. You just may require families tapping in to those services, which then in the end would benefit these community nonprofit services centers anyways.
Thanks for that context, Manaya.
I'm wondering if we can say something here in the document. I've added a little bit here. Expressing concern that if these positions are eliminated, they could limit access and disproportionately affect vulnerable students and families, particularly with interpreters. That's what I'm hearing here. Do you want to just urge the board to ensure that access isn't limited? Is that the goal?
Yeah, that sounds good. And I think specifically make sure that there are avenues for families and students to initiate a conversation. That they can request interpreters, not, you know, and not have it be, you know, however many, I don't know how many community agents we have, but not have it be so few that it's really hard to get access to interpretation to be able to reach out to teachers or admin or, you know, counselors or whoever they're wanting to talk to at their child's school.
Okay.
Mignana's point was, or the comment that you made, Mignana, I believe, was around coordination of services across organizations. So I just wanted to repeat that in case we wanted to add something to that effect.
Or
Yeah. partnerships, coordination with community resources, making sure those things are utilized.
Raj, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. One of the, I don't know where we can add this, but one of my major concerns is, I think it's under family engagement, just being a parent in this district. I would love to have more information about the curriculum and programming. Um, like more information about Avid, the effectiveness, the data, is it effective? So then, us looking at that, we can make a better determination if a program needs to be cut or not, just by looking at the data. So I would love to have more engagement like around that. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know if that's a town hall. I don't know. But I'm just, that's just one of the things I'm observing and just being a parent in this district for a number of years. Like we never had that type of information. Like I don't know what's going on within my kid's school. I don't know the curriculum. I don't know the programming. I know we have back to school nights, but sometimes that's one night, and sometimes that you can't relay all that information in one night. Um, but or even with the CBRC, just having more engagement around the effectiveness of programming and things like that, so we can make a better determination and evaluate and make our recommendations that way. I would love to go that deep within the engagement instead of sprinting last minute, reading information and trying to make a recommendation, but full out engagement throughout the year would be ideal. So I don't know where that can go, but I think it's something very important that we should look at.
So I actually wrote this section, Karanja, and I kind of kept it really focused to the budget. But I don't disagree with you on having that added as a bullet. I just was trying to keep like the thoughts specifically around the budget, but I'm also hearing this conversation where we're adding a little bit more context to why these areas of the budget are important. And so I don't see a problem with adding that unless other folks do.
Alexander, would you mind jumping in and maybe helping out a little bit here? I'm up higher in the document.
Right. Yeah, I'm processing the comments and I was thinking there's an opportunity in the section that's PPS and reputation and family engagement, and thinking also about this section about timing, transparency, and public engagement. So I wasn't sure where this makes most sense. I associate what you're saying, Karanja, with program-based budgeting when we're talking about evaluating for effectiveness and presenting that financial information in context. So I associated it more here with transparency, but I want to make sure it's housed somewhere that makes sense for the members.
I would just say too that there's also, it's part of the bond. We spent quite a bit from the bond on curriculum and materials, and so that transparency of what do we get for our monetary commitment is important to show the impact, and also like what are we teaching? What did we get? What are our kids hearing? Yeah. What'd you do at school today? Nothing. What'd you learn? I don't know. I don't remember. Like I know that there were some efforts to share with parents directly, like slide decks and things, so they could get to know what it was that was changed, especially in the K-5, because that's what I'm most familiar with. But definitely agree with Karanja that there needs to be more outreach and more sharing of here's what we're doing, here's what worked, so there's a true partnership between schools and their communities.
Absolutely. Even with the integrated grant application, if we would have had more engagement beforehand, before the application actually went out, and see exactly what we are planning to do, we could have been able to give, better recommendations of how we can, spend that money from the state. Um, so yeah, there's different things that I'm noticing that I would like to have this better and deeper engagement.
So right now I've added this bullet within timing, transparency, and public engagement at the end. It says share information transparently on program performance to allow for evaluation. And then I think when we're talking about curriculum adoption, and I'm wondering if it fits in both sections. So when we're talking about family engagement, um, maybe the comment is around the content of what's engaged, because this is, when it says families need more than announcements and surveys, what I'm hearing is that there was a desire for more specific program information to reach folks earlier on so that they can engage and react to more specific or detailed information. So I'm wondering if we should add it almost in both places. Dashiell, I see your hand up.
Yes. So I did have a section on data as well. And I think the bullet, because it sounds like we might be repeating something 3 times. So the last bullet in the data transparency and use section is sharing back findings with the community in plain language so stakeholders can see how their feedback shape decisions. It's not exactly what you're saying, but I feel like we're kind of getting a little close to repeating the same thing. So maybe we might want to consolidate some language and find a final home for it.
Which page are you looking at, Dashiell?
Yeah. It's 16.
I like it in both areas.
Okay. How about I'm going to write the bullet that I suggest, and then Director Sullivan, let's hear from you.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is there a way for parents to find out what's happening that week in their school's class or their children's classroom? Is there a website that teachers put out that says today we're, studying, insects or whatever, and next week we're gonna look at the solar system, anything like that, or?
I think it varies by teacher.
Okay.
Some do a monthly newsletter, say this is what we're working on this month. Some people, send out text reminders on Remind with notes. And there's always a monthly newsletter from each school principal that doesn't go into specifics about what's in the classroom, but it varies by teacher. I think that the bigger picture question that I'm hearing from Deschelle and from Karanja is, how are we evaluating what's being done in schools for the outcomes, and having that information be really clear and transparent. Like, this is the problem, this is how we're addressing it, and this is what we're seeing from what we put into it.
Is that what you meant, Karanja? Or did you?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for anybody, but that's what I heard.
Or did you mean you want to know what's happening in your child's class?
I think everyone, and I think they shall, articulated it as well. So I think the language is there.
Okay.
But I do have a question for you, Director Sullivan. With the integrated grant application, was the board involved in terms of like having a deeper dive of what was happening within programming within that grant, or did you guys just have the document and you had to vote on it because you have the vote in order to go to the state? But I'm just curious on that engagement with the board of where you guys engaged or what exactly the programming was going to be in those different budget items. Because I mean, it was a huge budget. It's like over 32 million.
Well, pretty much what we got, what you saw too, if you looked at all of that, especially there's a lot in Head Start, and I was involved with that and in observing programs, and there was a lot with the CTE, but we saw pretty much what you saw if you read all that. And what it sounded like they mostly wanted to do with CTE, there was just a lot of looking at where it's happening and how it's happening. And if we're going to get the grant, we have to be a little more, I guess, careful about what we're doing.
So did you guys know like way in advance, or was it
No, we didn't know way in advance. No.
Okay, for the sake of time, could we, let's see, go back up and roll through some of these sections. So we finished with impact to students. I'm going to summarize a little bit here and stop as we need to. So in equity funding and differentiated supports, we talk here about PPS's equity allocation. I believe Grace noted that all high schools get the 9% equity allocation. And so we put it as a question here. We question whether this approach, everybody getting the 9%, supports the district's goal to close racial disparities in academic achievements. And we note in terms of differentiated supports, there was elimination of it was a half-time FTE for the TAG program. And they're under a corrective action plan with the Department of Education. So the recommendation here is, or we can just put it as a question, if you prefer, is a clarification on how the district is going to comply with the TAG requirement and in the absence of that coordinator. And I did see that there was a response to that in the questions. So thank you for that. But I think that stands.
Director Sullivan, do you have a comment on that?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I put my hand down. There we go.
I know we've had a lot of discussion on the blended classrooms and the staffing strategy there. So we note that the PPS is that the budget proposes expanding to, we thought it was about 18, so I just noted that number, but in there. And the additional supports required for those classes. We're unclear on what the savings would be of that strategy. We understand the desire to maintain smaller schools, near enrollment thresholds. We'd like to understand the plan, if this is a solution for keeping schools open and how that works with demographic trends. We ask the board to consider how this meets long-term instructional needs and long-term costs operating in this model. So it's just an ask. We note the rise in teacher overload pay over the course of the past 5 years. And it raises questions about whether blended classrooms may be used in place of hiring additional educational assistants. think it's not blended classrooms. I think it's actually overload pay.
Yeah.
And just a comment, you know, I think Michelle may have provided the response, not to put you on the hot seat, Michelle, but in our Monday meeting, we had talked about the number of blended classrooms, and we had stated it was 18, but it was that there were 18 added, and that we've had blended classrooms at some of our school
Yeah.
sites. So I'm just suggesting that we adjust that language to reflect that we've expanded it.
Thank you. Okay. Expanding by. Thank you.
Can I just make a comment on this educational assistance? I'm aware that this was asked in, I believe, by one of our board members about the amount of educational assistance that may have been added due to overage or to like the amount of educational assistance that may have been needed. And I believe the response was that we did not allocate educational assistance in the current year. But I think, Tammy, you may have access to that question. So I was wondering if you could check that for us.
And just to clarify the specific question.
I believe this would be in the board questions document that we had. And I think it was already provided to the board.
I don't think the CBRC has seen that.
I don't think that you would have either. We have a lot of questions in progress, but I think that one was checked.
Feel free to come back to that with a response. But so our recommendation would be to provide an analysis of comparing the cost of overload pay to the cost of having essentially more adults in the classroom, EAs, or other classroom support, and evaluating the educational effectiveness of blended classrooms and how they impact student outcomes, particularly for students needing more individualized support. And we just note that families and educators frequently support a preference for more adult support in classrooms. We give a caution about deferring difficult decisions about school consolidations, which is kind of consistent through here. And let's see, we've got recommendation transition to the MAP assessment. I think Ron just talked us through this a bit. The move away from MAP assessments, this would essentially, we may be moving to a free assessment provided by the state anyway. So this would create savings. I don't know if there's training that would be required around this, so there may be initial cost, but it sounds like that would be something that would happen anyway. Does the committee have any thoughts on this? Okay, let's adopt this as a recommendation then for the board. Crunch, if you're fine with it, I might move this around a little bit and just phrase it as a recommendation and include your rationale here.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Operational efficiencies and central services. So we note our 2023 report. We note that, you know, we've seen years of cuts here, and we recommend more transparent reporting on those reductions. I think if we want to call anything out, it's just the difficulty of actually being able to assess things like contract savings. I understand that there's been an audit and we can't actually look at those savings to see.
I think I heard Dr. Armstrong mention that at the the meeting at Grant, something about
Oh.
that information coming to the board soon. Is that right? From the audit?
Yeah, so we haven't seen that yet.
No, and I don't think the board hasn't seen it yet either. Is that right, Director?
Okay.
That's right. I was thinking, I hope it hasn't come out, and I am, because I don't think I've seen it anyway.
Okay, so then that's not something we'd call for yet. Okay. So our recommendations, we're asking for detail on the specific types of central service positions eliminated. And I think that's just because the board book here can't really help us drill down far enough. And I'm not sure if any of that's a privacy issue because this is a proposed budget.
I think it is in a way, because if you mention a particular position, you're kind of mentioning the person. So that,
Yeah, if you have a comm staff of 10 and you say you're eliminating 3 comms positions, people figure it out.
yeah. So I think.
Okay. Maybe it's in retrospective, we could ask for that.
Yeah, that makes sense once it's done. Yeah.
And then our other recommendation is to disclose the total amount of cuts to central office spending in a way that clearly separates from school level reductions. Sometimes that's tricky. Oh, I'm sorry, I see Deschelle.
Oh, I just had a question to what Director Sullivan was saying about the confidentiality aspects of that information, but you made a point about kind of getting it after, and maybe there's a way to also see the trends. So like after these things are done, maybe we can see it and then look at some of those future projections that may occur, so we can kind of caution some things to avoid. So I know, like, yes, privacy reasons, we can't get it upfront, but perhaps we can start to look at the future in a little bit more of a long-term way.
I just want to also, again, from the teacher perspective, it's spelled out really clearly who's losing their jobs at the school level. Why do we not care about the privacy there, but we care about the privacy at the central level so much?
Oh, sorry, I was referring to the teacher level, Grace, but
okay,
yeah, but I agree with you there. Yeah, I'm sorry, mistake on my end.
Yeah, because the volume 2 spells out, which positions are, what type of job is cut, but then we can't get that specificity at the central level. That doesn't compute in my brain.
That's a fair point. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll leave the recommendation as is. And we've added in here, a couple people noted that there's what is it called? A wage. Essentially, there's another level of a senior administration added. I think it's just people that are moving up into it with a new salary range that's included as part of this budget. The board noted this as well. And just simply that didn't feel good as a part of this particular budget. I leave it to you as to whether you want to include that or not.
I have some information. I have some information on that if you'd like. Actually, it was our student director, JJ, asked the question about the total cost of the leadership team and got the answer. This year, we have 82 leaders across the central office that would cost 20,000 or 20,720,630.75. We reduced it to 75 leaders, and that adjusted cost is 19,119,000, et cetera. The savings from the reduction is 1,600,000. So yes, they did get raised to leaders. They've also cut. So the total savings with the leadership team is $1,600,000, according to the information I have. So although, yes, there was a couple more people added at a higher salary level, the whole team has been consolidated. And I think consolidated in a way that the superintendent thinks will make it more efficient and work better for how she thinks she can deal with the whole horrible problem we have this year. So that's because it was interesting that JJ is the one who thought to ask that and got the answer. It was pretty impressive.
Director Sullivan, can you repeat those numbers again? The 82
Right.
was.
Yeah, this year we have 82 leaders that would cost, I'll just say the numbers. Okay, 20,720,630.75. We reduced it to 75 leaders, and the adjusted cost is 19,119,856.68. The savings from the reduction is 1,600,774.07.
So that's like a 7% cut, and I'm just back at the napkin math.
Thank you.
Somebody run the average of what that actually means. Like, is that salaries?
Well, yeah, I'm sure it's salaries and all this extra stuff that comes with salaries, which, yeah, that's kind of amazing when you look at how much that is, but yeah.
In the same way that like a teacher, costs on the levy $135,000, but it's not
Right. But they'll never see that money.
what
Right.
they'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we can leave it or we can cut it. Open a feedback.
I think it's good to put in there as it is. I think that reflects some of, at least my values. It reflects a lot of the values we heard and have heard over the years from public comment. Wanting, if we truly are going to be having the last resort be cutting at school levels and cut, we're in the same report talking about potentially, huge shifts towards school closures, even possibly, like you said, it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel in alignment with what the district is saying about caring for serving our schools the best they can.
Okay, I'm going to move on for now, and anybody wants to weigh into the draft, they can put comments in there. Enrollment and
Maya, do you
attendance.
mind if I just make a quick clarifying comment?
Okay.
I hope is just wanted to flag that within function 2000 support services, when we're saying shows only a modest reduction, I just wanted for awareness for folks to know that within that support services, we're looking at school facing positions. So that is a component of this change that's reflected here. And this is looking at all funds as well. So I wanted to clarify that when we're associating it with central support in this section, it doesn't only refer to central support in that function. And we had provided, tried to provide more of a breakdown by function to assess how central has changed as we presented it in the budget document.
I'm gonna be honest, this is from Stefan, and I'm not sure I fully follow the difference. So if we need some follow-up on this, we can.
I don't know if we need to follow up. I think it might just be helpful to add to acknowledge that it includes not only central office, or even centrally managed services, that there are school-based services that are included in that.
Okay.
I
Would
can
you
add
add it?
that language because
Would you
I
add a
think
note?
when I move on, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've wanted to focus a lot on enrollment and attendance. I've heard that from our committee here. We've got a couple pages on this. And I've tried to consolidate a bit. So if you don't see your bullet point in here and you want to add it back in, please do. We note that we've tried that classroom staffing is essential to families, and that's part of building trust and stabilizing enrollment. But it's also those wraparound supports that support attendance. And we need to see those reflected in the budget as well. Realizing we're in a tough budget situation, we recommend prioritizing restoration and protection of roles proven to impact in attendance and engagement, such as social workers, counselors, and librarians, for new funds. I added the qualifier of new funds in there. If you want to take that out, I can. Or as funds become available, or I don't know where we take it from, or from any savings. I'll keep rolling here. We also have recommendations around implementing evidence-based strategies. I mean, there's everything from offering breakfast during first period. Apparently that gets kids to school. Revisiting the school calendar, which can help with absenteeism. Launching, I love this one, a short-term attendance matters campaign. That's so great. And leveraging messaging, getting that out into our community. Marketing the value of our PPS education. I know the district actually has done some of that. Encouraging enrollment through community partnerships, referral networks. I think we're just giving the district, our community input here, and I love it. Conducting exit interviews with families for those who leave. Expanding on work with ELD, early learning programs, and best efforts to attract families earlier and retain them, and continue building a referral network. In the long term, we urge a district to sustain and grow in-school wraparound services that address non-academic barriers to learning, and position schools as hubs of support, possibly partnering with other government agencies. So bringing in things like a health clinic or emotional support services. We urge the district to review and share a transparent enrollment and attendance strategies supported by data and measurable outcomes.
So
Please jump in.
I mean, you did a great job of pulling together so many disparate parts and making sense of it. I was trying to pull out and separate the two issues because there's attendance and then there's enrollment. And like I don't know the numbers around this, but I have personally seen people leave the city because the city, and then families that choose, I have a family right now actively choosing to go to private school. And, I don't know what percentage of the problem we're having is that, but I was trying to break that out as a separate issue to try to, encourage them to stay in the community schools rather than peeling off. And I thought maybe it would be good to break that out as a separate kind of consideration. Because I don't know I mean, maybe the wraparound services would be something they'd look into. But and knowing like what's actually happening there, I imagine there's some data that the district has, like why are families choosing to go to private school and spend $25,000?
Yeah, we can reformat this. And that now that you say it, that actually makes sense. I'm seeing Vinyana as well. Here, please jump in.
Hi. Yeah, so when I was doing research, the only reason why I grouped it together is because when I was looking into how to retain attendance, it several times it continued to be brought up that wraparound services what brings families to the schools. A lot of appeal. These are just some bullet points that I was able to gather. I'm okay with it being separate, but I seen in many places that it was grouped together, and I'm like, to me, it just kind of made sense. But for the point that you're making, um, I don't know the percentage or the reason ultimately why. I mean, when I think about it, why families are maybe no longer engaging in PPS, we talk about the cost of living for sure. But like from my standpoint, I work with immigrant and refugee families. A lot of them don't trust the system when they come to the US. They're not by law, they don't have to put their kids in public school until they're 6. A lot of them are forced to do so. So I have a lot of different viewpoints on exactly why, outside of the main ideas of why families aren't really, we got immigration law, people aren't really wanting to engage with the schools and not see their kids again. There's a lot of fear there, but that doesn't really it really doesn't speak to the sentiments of why the numbers are decreasing ongoing from years back to now. But like I said, I'm okay with separating it. It's just I found that the wraparound services were of a support to retain the attendance. But like I said, I understand your angle. I just wanted to put my 2 cents. I almost kind of put it in the note comment side of the document, but I said, no, I'll just wait until we have the meeting. Thank you.
And I think that makes perfect sense for because we're really I think talking about two different problems, maybe multiple problems for the school district, and the the people that are I can't afford to take my kids into private school, nor would I want to try to afford that. So I'm hoping that we can pull the ship up so I wouldn't have to figure out how to make that happen. But that's a different animal from families that their child just lost interest in the school. So I don't know what the percentages are. Do we have any information on like which hole is leaking faster? Attendance issues or I mean I imagine attendance is bad, but like and people that would have otherwise gone to PPS choosing to go to private school. I think that's the one I think possibly we could move the needle on in the next year. But I don't know what
I'm not
percentage that
I'm not
is.
sure what our dropout rate is, which I think is what's kind of relevant here. Like I know our graduation rate's pretty good. I'm not sure what our dropout rate is, but I think I know what you're after. Let me just for time, can I work on this or can we all work on this kind of after? But I think
Yeah,
separating that out, like strategies that support strong attendance, those wraparound services, those things that keep kids in school, and then enrollment, attracting and retaining families, it's quality, it's, all the things. And I'll go back to
perfect.
the original document and some of the things that you specifically and Deshelle have put in there as well. And I think part of that is PPS's reputation, family engagement next. Deshelle, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just kind of like just piggyback off of what Aaron was saying and maybe even like drill down deeper where the drop off point occurs. Like is it a certain grade? Is it a certain age group? Is it families who are not from Portland who have moved here and they leave at a quicker rate? Like there has to be something I feel like that could tell us where it would be happening outside of the enrollment or attendance, but also just like those who are in the system and then kind of like drop off at a certain point. Do we know what that might be? And if we don't, then maybe that's just worth exploring at a later time. I know we're short on time tonight.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that that is a different issue. I don't know if it's a major issue. It sounds like it might be. And so it might be worth calling that out specifically. So yeah, I would be happy to kind of jump back in and create more of a bullet point list like this. I use too much text.
We have an embarrassment of riches in terms of this report. It's going to be great. Thank you guys so much. Okay, so we'll jump back in and kind of separate this out a little bit and kind of finalize that. reputation and family engagement. This is great. It talks about the engagement summary and engaging our families. We need more than announcements and surveys, disaggregating data, clarifying how input comes in. Not sure if we want anything here. Expanding outreach efforts to families who may not have digital access or language familiarity.
On that note, we have 5 community engagement specialists across the district. So if they cut those language access people, that's 5 people for families to call.
That's a good point. All right, on our capital bond, I think we're pretty supportive here. Our recommendation is around ensuring that, thorough review, transparency, clearly communicating to the public how the project scopes, if they're revised, and core instructional resources in terms of maintaining student-teacher ratios, being transparent about the process of revising scopes, and just calling out keeping things that can be in the bond, and using being forward-looking about that. So if we have something that's coming up, putting it in the next bond, because general funds are scarce. We'll pause on any of this if anybody wants to here. We had great ideas here on revenue diversification and innovation, giving the board some food for thought here. Noting that we're just, we're really tied to state funding. That's how public schools are here. That the legislature hasn't been especially forthcoming with additional funding, and suggesting, given the pressures that we have and the forecast, that we pilot some alternative models, potentially looking for public-private partnerships. This is probably going to require some investment in the school district to pursue these. And thinking about things like PCC's done, for instance, I'm just calling that out. It's not in here, but co-location models. We do have Fabian. That's one of them. And I'm probably going to consolidate these 2 lists because they have a lot of the same things in here. So it's tech and university collaborations. So we have co-location models. I'll tweak that and probably combine those there. Affordable housing or mixed use developments, that kind of things. Creative land uses such as solar installations, or limited development agreements where appropriate. So just thinking about all the ways that we could use our properties while still retaining them. We just call out a budget line on the civic use and leasing of district assets. We have this CUB revenue. There's a very optimistic line in there about the more than doubling of that revenue next year. We'll see. I don't know if that's just because permit amounts are going up. It's been really cheap to rent a classroom until now. I don't know what's happening with that, but we note that as a worthwhile pursuit. Yeah, Michelle, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to share that we have transitioned to a more automated system for facility rental. And so with that requires, instead of manually entering in worksheets and tracking facility use that way and invoicing folks, we are able to get payment up front for facility use. And so we anticipate that that's going to take a lot of the subjectivity out of the process and should improve revenue. So I just wanted to offer that is something that's already in place.
Yay, let's end on a great note. I think we've already talked through asset management, and kind of our last recommendation here And I've modified this since we talked through it the last time, is on reserves and one-time spending. We have historically as a committee recommended that the district hold more than the bare minimum of 5%. That's a little tricky this year since we're already at 5%. So I don't have the numbers in here and I'll need to plug them in, or we can just leave them out, but just noting the 5%. And we note that these have been used to backfill essentially with one-time and delaying permanent cuts. I note the ice storms in here was something that we use general funds for. It's the sort of thing that we've used reserves for. But the proposed budget continues to use one-time general funds. We note a couple of programs, not calling out their worthiness specifically, but just noting that that's a strategy we want to get away from. Accordingly, we make the following recommendations to avoid, and I'm not sure why I have numbering in here or bold, to avoid the use of one-time reserves or general funds to close a budget shortfall, unless there's an exit strategy for that item, or it leads to long-term cost reductions or revenue gains. There's a House bill right now, I think I've mentioned this, for the nutrition amount. And so if that's enacted, recommending the district allocate those to either replenish reserves, to replenish reserves, and then a recommendation to commit to a plan to gradually rebuilding reserves for, against basically future volatility. Those would be our recommendations. Any comments or thoughts on any of those? They're pretty well in line with what the committee has supported in the past, but if anything stands out for you, we could take a different track.
Good work, everybody.
Okay. We end with appreciation, and on our addendum, that's where we've put, talking about our asks around timing and transparency and specific things that we would love to see in terms of the process. Director Sullivan.
Yeah. I just like to say how appreciative I am of all the hard work you've done. You're such a wonderfully brilliant group of people with so many ideas, and it's been impressive to see you. So I just want to thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with you. And thank you.
Okay, well, nobody sign off for 1 minute. We have 2 more last items of business. So we need to, as a committee, vote to approve these or to adopt these, to approve these, to send to the board. So the first one, let's go back to the levy. So our CBRC annual local option levy review. And so if somebody wants to make a motion to adopt this, and with any needed small text changes.
I move to adopt as is with the room to make grammatical changes.
Okay, and do we want to do a raise of hands with your little hand button? Does that work?
Do we need a second?
Oh,
Second.
thank you. I'll just keep them up until Alexander has enough.
It only keeps it up for a few seconds on my end.
Okay.
Deshelle, did you vote to approve?
Yeah, it just, my hand was let down after 8 seconds. Yeah.
Okay. Karanja did as well. Sonia, I'm not seeing your yes vote.
I'm having trouble doing it, but yes, my vote is yes.
Okay, that is a majority of our CBRC members in this space.
Okay, we'll take them down. Our second piece here is to adopt with changes to content, but not to the meaning, our letter to our community budget review annual, what are we calling this? Our annual budget review letter to the board, our recommendations.
Move to adopt per those stipulations.
Second.
Okay. And we'll do a hands up vote or a voice vote if your hand's not working.
Sonia, can I check on you again? Do you vote to approve this report?
Yes.
All right, that is a majority of our CBRC members.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you all. If you have changes and want to jump in, let's try to get this to the board. If you have any changes before 9 a.m. tomorrow, I will make a last swoop through and get it to Alexandra by 9:30, and then she can send it off to the board. Thank you.
That's great. I'm so glad this went so well tonight. I just had one other comment for the group, and I don't know if you saw this, Mariah, but wanted to acknowledge this. We had a huge recruitment. There was so much outreach that happened when these members came on board to the CBRC a few years ago. And I wanted to acknowledge that you have been with us through incredibly challenging times for our school district. There has been so much going on over the past few years. And so I wanted to acknowledge that since we have so many of you who have terms ending on June 30th. So we're so glad that you were with us. And I wanted to make a little space for Tammy and Michelle as well, if you had anything to add to that. But I know that our district deeply appreciates your engagement.
Thank you,
Yeah, losing your
Alexandra,
mind.
for a minute, and it'll be less than a minute, but I just want to express great appreciation. I've only worked with budget committees, which are partly comprised of the board, in my experience. And so I guess the concept of the CBRC was fairly new to me, but the discussion you have and the attention that you are paying to the experience of the students of PPS is just incredible, and I've been really thankful to get to be a part of this. So thank you so much for your service, and I just really appreciate it. And props to Alexandra. She is an incredible facilitator, and I'm very thankful to have her on my team.
And I don't know that I can top that, but I will second every bit of that. Michelle and I come from very similar backgrounds with exposure and just the level of attention and detail that you give to this committee in your time. I'm just amazed and in awe at that, and appreciate it, and appreciate the feedback, and learning how we can be more responsive and as a community as well.
Well, just our last item of business is we are going to present to the board on May 6th. I will be there, and I invite each of you, if you would like to present a section, if you have one you want to speak to, feel free to drop your name in the document next to it. We'll take that out before we put that to the board, or just show up. I'd love to have you speak to, what your heart's really about. It is great to have. Yeah, I'll be at the Profit Center in person. Alexandra, if you could give us a time certain when we get that, just for folks who might be a little time constrained.
I can, yeah, and I didn't see it posted yet, but I will let you know as soon as possible when I see the time.
Yeah, usually they give us a window of, I don't know, 20 minutes or something like that. But thank you everyone for your hard work on this. Appreciate it. And meeting adjourned. Oh,
Thank
Grace,
you,
I'm sorry.
Mariah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mariah for her awesome leadership also, and Alexandra, thank you for, you know, being so gracious and wrangling all the cats. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to all of you.